Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Debate Impacts podcast. I'm your host, Michi Sin, and this is the podcast to listen to if you want a firsthand, candid look into the world of speech and debate. Each week, we'll hear from alumni, current students, instructors, coaches, or parents about their personal stories and experiences in speech and debate and why they believe speech and debate has the power to change lives. This week, we have a very special episode. The annual Tournament of Champions is coming up this weekend, where thousands of elite debaters from across the nation gather in Kentucky to compete. J.W. Patterson founded the Tournament of Champions 53 years ago, and unfortunately, this is the first TOC that will be held after his passing. Today, we will listen to interviews and clips where Dr. Patterson talks about the founding of the TOC, its evolution over time, and its enormous and everlasting impact on the debate space. What inspired you to become a professor and coach debate?
Although we have many teachers from kindergarten on, my guess is that most have only a very few that are truly inspirational. I was fortunate. I had one in high school, one in college. My high school teacher was a math and science teacher. She was absolutely brilliant, but most of all, she was encouraging every step of the way. I found myself working harder just to please her because I did not want to disappoint her. She was absolutely wonderful. I had the same experience in college with my debate coach. He made such a difference in my life. I really decided, observing him and how he inspired us, that really was a big factor in me deciding I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to coach debate. And he encouraged me every step of the way. But I think it was the inspiration, the caring on his part, making you feel that you were important. I think that is a fundamental part of a good teacher. And I was lucky to have had two that did that for me.
What gave you the idea for the Tournament of Champions?
People often ask me, how did I come up with the idea for the TOC, the Tournament of Champions? Well, it really goes back to Muskogee, Oklahoma. And yes, in part, I am an Okie from Muskogee. I taught high school there for 9 years. One day I decided I want to do an invitational tournament. There weren't many that drew people very far away in those days, but I want to draw from multiple states. So I decided to start a tournament and call it the Little Nationals. Well, in the 9 years we did it, we got to the point that we had 1,000 students in this town of 40,000. Now, where we housed them, I can't remember. I know even in the hotels, they were limited in those days. But that led me to think later when I came to Kentucky, I want to do something similar, but I want it to be smaller. I would like to do a tournament that attracts a high school tournament. Incidentally, I was in college teaching by then, but my interest in high school debate never waned. It has never waned today. But I wanted to do a national tournament that would draw the best of the best. So I decided to call it Tournament of Champions, in which students had to qualify to get here. And that was the beginning. Now, I must say the tournament in people's eyes is much more significant than I envisioned it would be, although I thought I could make it into a good tournament. But that was really how the TOC started, with the Little Nationals in Muskogee, Oklahoma, USA.
What made you want to start a more competitive tournament?
Soon after I became director of the Kentucky College Debate Program, I decided that Kentucky should have a college invitational tournament and a high school invitational. Concentrated first on the college one. I also decided if I'm going to do a college tournament, I want some of the top college teams in the country to be here. So I decided a way to attract them would be to have a round robin 2 days before the Henry Clay, the big college tournament. So we invited nine of the top, what I perceived to be nine of the top teams in the country. I believe 8 of them accepted. I knew that if some of the top teams were here, others would follow suit. Kentucky wanted to go where the best were. I knew others felt the same way, and it worked. Overnight, the Henry Clay became a major national tournament. The same thing worked with the first high school tournament. I decided if I'm going to do a high school tournament, I want some of the best. So that we came up with the concept of the Tournament of Champions. Make it a qualifier, attract some of the best, others will want to come. And so that's the way we developed both tournaments almost overnight, became national tournaments. Incidentally, the way we decided on Tournament of Champions, I was talking one evening with one of my best debaters at that time named Jim Flegel. How can we build a national debate tournament quickly? And that's when we came up with the idea of a Tournament of Champions. Invite the best to debate with the best. And that's exactly what we did.
What determined the size of the first TOC?
In addition to having the best teams, at that time I heard over and over again from high school debaters the quality of judging. They were debating for a trained, skilled judge. They were studying in that direction, but they weren't getting that kind of judging. So we decided, Jim and I did that night, let's keep it small so that we can have what we call flow sheet judges for each debate. And we can't do that if we let it get too big. So we came up with the magic number of no more than 64 teams. And that's exactly how many we had for years.
What was the reaction to the first TOC?
The first TOC in '72, frankly, exceeded my expectations. I knew we were going to attract some very good teams, but it actually attracted more than I expected. And just overnight, people started inquiring about next year's TOC. Of course, that was very encouraging, very inspiring. But it was just miraculous how it all came together so quickly. I always thought we could develop it into an outstanding tournament, but frankly, it exceeded my expectations, how people came to regard it. And some would say to me, this is the ultimate. The TOC is the ultimate tournament. And I would always say, it's one of many good tournaments. Let's not overdo it.
When did you expand the size of the TOC?
After we started the TOC, which was policy only, Lincoln Douglas debate began to rise in popularity. Now, we didn't add it at first, waited several years, but about 82, I believe it was, about 10 years after the TOC began, we added Lincoln Douglas. Believe it or not, there were people in policy that said, you're going to ruin the Tournament of Champions if you let LD in. Well, of course, LD did not ruin the Tournament of Champions, it enhanced it. But we kept the same criteria, only bring the LD debaters who are true champions to the tournament, so we kept it small. We did not let it get out of hand. And then I think it was 20 years later before we added what has now become public forum debate. I think we added that in 2002, And then we added Student Congress in 2006. Those were the 4 divisions in the tournament while I was there. Now, since I've left, individual events, IE has been added. But hopefully, it's still champions coming for the TOC. People often ask me, am I surprised that the Tournament of Champions has become such a major event for so many debaters? And the answer is yes and no. I'll have to admit, it became a very desired tournament for so many people much quicker than I thought it would. But it's not surprising to me now that it's so as popular as it is. I'm told by many that it's the ultimate goal of many debaters. What I'm hoping is that it will not become anything other than a tournament of champions. I would hate to see it get to the point where just anybody can go, because that defeats the purpose of a tournament of champions. I want it to be a tournament in which champions debated champions. Now, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be many other tournaments where anybody can go, because without those, there'd be no tournament of champions. But I think it should be fine, one tournament a year where the best meet the best. And that was the goal of the TOC. And I think in large part we've achieved it, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Thank you so much for listening, and please donate to the J.W. Patterson Foundation to support Futures in Debate.